Welcome to Debate the News True Crime. I'm Joseph Lobosco, here with host Adrienne Barker. Tonight we delve into the rise and tragic fall of Aaron Hernandez, a former NFL star turned convicted murderer. Hernandez was a talented New England Patriots tight end who seemingly had it all, until he was implicated in multiple killings and ultimately died by suicide in prison. In this episode, we'll unpack how a Super Bowl athlete ended up at the center of several murder cases. We'll discuss sensitive topics, including murder, gun violence, and suicide, which some listeners may find disturbing. If you or someone you know needs support, help may be available via the Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. We approach this story with respect for all the victims. May they rest in peace. Before we continue, a quick disclaimer. Adrienne and I are not attorneys, law enforcement officials, or forensic psychologists. We research each case thoroughly, but this show is recorded live with minimal editing. Any factual errors are unintentional. And remember, any individuals we discuss who have not been convicted of a crime are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The opinions of our guests and audience members are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of myself, Adrienne, or Debate the News.
I'm Adrienne Barker. This is Debate the News True Crime. Let's dive into the case timeline.
Aaron Joseph Hernandez is born November 6, 1989 in Bristol, Connecticut. He grows up athletic but in a turbulent home. Despite personal struggles, Hernandez excelled at football. By his senior year of high school, he was a nationally recognized All-American, catching the attention of top college programs. Hernandez enrolls at the University of Florida in early 2007 to play for the Gators, but red flags emerge immediately. In an April 2007 incident, he punches a restaurant employee in Gainesville, yet no charges are filed in that incident. A few months later, in September 2007, Hernandez is questioned by police after a drive-by shooting in Gainesville leaves 2 men wounded. Again, no charges are filed. On the field, however, he does thrive, helping the Florida Gators win a national championship in the 2008 season. After his junior year, during which he won the John Mackey Award as the nation's top collegiate tight end, Hernandez makes the decision to go pro.
The New England Patriots select 20-year-old Aaron Hernandez in the 4th round of the 2010 NFL Draft. Concerns about his off-field behavior, including failed drug tests in college, likely caused him to fall behind in the draft. But New England had taken a chance. And for a while, it paid off. Hernandez quickly proves himself on the field. He catches 6 touchdown passes as a rookie. By his second season, he plays in Super Bowl 46 for the Patriots. At just 22 years old, he is now a rising star in the spotlight alongside quarterback Tom Brady.
In the summer of 2012, Hernandez's life splits in 2 very different tracks. On July 16, 2012, 2 men, 28-year-old Daniel Deabro and 29-year-old Safiro Furtado, are shot to death in a drive-by shooting outside of a Boston nightclub. The brazen double homicide goes unsolved at the time, and Hernandez's name does not surface publicly as a suspect in 2012. Just 1 month later, on August 27, 2012, the Patriots reward Hernandez with a 5-year, $40 million contract extension. At the press conference, Hernandez ironically thanked team owner Robert Kraft and coach Bill Belichick for helping him mature, saying the Patriots had taught him to shed his, quote, reckless behavior. By all appearances, the young star was settling down. His fiancée, Shayana Jenkins, gave birth to their baby daughter in November 2012. However, darker events had already been set in motion behind the scenes.
Early in 2013, another violent incident occurs. On a trip to Florida, Hernandez drug dealer, Alexander Bradley, is brutally shot in the face after a night of partying with Aaron Hernandez at a Miami club. Miraculously, Bradley survives, but loses one of his eyes. The incident remains mostly out of the public's view at the time because Bradley had initially refused to reveal the name of the person that shot him.
On June 17, 2013, another shockingly violent event occurs in Hernandez's proximity. Odin Lloyd, a 27-year-old semi-pro football player who was dating Aaron's future sister-in-law, is found shot to death in an isolated industrial park in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. The location of Lloyd's body is less than a mile from Hernandez's mansion, and Lloyd had been out with Hernandez and two of Aaron's friends just hours before his death.
Surveillance footage from Hernandez's own home shows him with Lloyd shortly before the murder, and texts from Lloyd suggest he was with NFL, referring to Aaron, right before he was killed. And in a blatant attempt to cover his tracks, Hernandez destroys his cell phone. By now, what started as a local homicide is making international headlines.
Just over a week after Odin Lloyd's death, police move in. On the morning of June 26, officers arrive at Hernandez's North Attenborough home and lead him out in handcuffs. He's charged with first-degree murder and multiple gun violations. The news erupts across TV screens. A star NFL player perp-walked from his mansion. Within 90 minutes of the arrest, the Patriots cut Hernandez from the team, distancing themselves from their once prized tight end. As Hernandez is booked, investigators in Boston quietly reopen the unsolved 2012 double homicide of Deabro and Furtado.
Carlos Ortiz and Ernest Wallace, friends from Bristol, Connecticut, who were allegedly with him the night of Lloyd's murders, they're picked up on accessory charges. And the emerging picture is that Hernandez did not act alone. He had loyal companions helping him. And around the same time, Alexander Bradley, the friend that Hernandez allegedly shot in Florida, he files a civil lawsuit formally accusing Hernandez of that February 2013 shooting. And at this point, the legal walls are closing in on Aaron from all multiple angles.
In September 2013, Hernandez pleads not guilty to Odin Lloyd's murder and is held awaiting trial. The victim's family also files a wrongful death lawsuit against him around this same time. Meanwhile, the Boston double murder investigation progresses. On May 15, 2014, a Suffolk County grand jury indicts Aaron Hernandez for the 2012 murders of Daniel Deabro and Safiro Furtado. The indictments include 2 counts of first-degree murder and additional charges of assault and weapons violations. Hernandez once again pleads not guilty. Notably, prosecutors believe that Hernandez's motive for killing Odin Lloyd was that Lloyd knew about Hernandez's role in those 2012 Boston murders. Essentially, that Aaron silenced Odin to cover up a previous crime. However, the judge in Lloyd's case rules this theory too speculative to present to the jury, so officially, the motive for killing Odin remains unclear at this point.
Around the same time in 2014, Hernandez gets into a jailhouse fight, punching a fellow inmate, which leads to an assault charge. And even from behind bars while awaiting trial, Aaron Hernandez, he's still committing more acts of violence. After over a year of pre-trial maneuvering, Hernandez's first murder trial begins in January of 2015 in Fall River, Massachusetts. And the prosecution, they lay out a compelling, if circumstantial case. They have videos of Hernandez with Odin Lloyd shortly before the murder, text messages, forensic evidence like shell casings found near Hernandez's car.
On April 15, 2015, a jury finds Aaron Hernandez guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Odin Lloyd. He's automatically sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which is the mandatory punishment in Massachusetts for first-degree murder. At 25 years old, the former NFL standout is now a convicted killer headed to state prison for the rest of his life. During the trial, it had emerged that 2 co-defendants, Ortiz and Wallace, were also charged as accessories, but Hernandez was clearly painted as the triggerman. Just weeks after the conviction, a judge formally sentences him to life at Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center, a maximum security prison not far from the Patriots Stadium, a bitter irony that did not go unnoticed.
Hernandez's legal woes weren't over. In May of 2015, a grand jury indicts him yet again, this time for witness intimidation related to the 2013 shooting of Alexander Bradley. Prosecutors allege that Hernandez shot his friend in the face to prevent him from testifying or revealing information about the 2012 Boston murders. This new charge, it underscores how intertwined these violent episodes were. By mid-2015, Hernandez has been convicted of one murder, charged in two others, a stunning downfall just 3 years after catching passes in the NFL playoffs.
Now serving a life term, Hernandez is transported to Boston in early 2017 to finally stand trial for the July 2012 double homicide of Deobro and Furtado. His second murder trial begins February 14, 2017, with a new defense team that includes high-profile attorney Jose Baez. The prosecution presents evidence that Hernandez was provoked by a trivial nightclub incident, and later pulled up alongside the victim's BMW and a Toyota 4Runner, opening fire at the stoplight. Key testimony comes from Alexander Bradley, the same friend Hernandez allegedly shot in the face in 2013. Bradley, who was granted immunity, testifies that he was the getaway driver that night in 2012 and that Hernandez was the one who fired the fatal shot.
In a dramatic turn, the jury had reasonable doubt, and on April 14, 2017, Aaron Hernandez is acquitted of the double murders. He breaks down crying in court as the non-guilty verdicts are read. It's a shocking outcome. For a moment, it seems like a small legal victory for Aaron and his family. He was now cleared of the 2 additional murder charges.
But just 5 days after the acquittal, the story takes a grim and unexpected turn. In the early hours of April 19, 2017, correction officers find Aaron Hernandez hanged by a bedsheet in his cell at Souza Baranowski Correctional Center. He is pronounced dead at a local hospital. The 27-year-old had died by suicide. The timing is eerie. This was the same day his former Patriots teammates were visiting the White House to celebrate a Super Bowl win. Hernandez had seemed upbeat after beating the double murder case. He even spoke on the phone with Cheyenne, his fiancée, the night before and hinted at a hopeful future. But by dawn, he was gone.
The news of Hernandez's death shocks everyone, from the families of victims to football fans, and it triggers a legal ripple effect on his convictions. At the time, Massachusetts followed a rule which vacates a conviction if the defendant dies before their appeal is heard.
True to that doctrine, in May 2017, the judge vacates Hernandez's murder conviction for Odin Lloyd, effectively erasing the guilty verdict, at least for a time. This infuriated Odin Lloyd's family and sparked public debate. Should a convicted murderer really get posthumously off the hook because he died by suicide before his appeal? In March 2019, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court abolishes that antiquated rule and orders Hernandez's conviction reinstated. The High Court rules that the conviction will stand, with a note that it was neither affirmed nor reversed due to the defendant's death. This change ensures that, in the record, Aaron Hernandez remains a convicted murderer, bringing some measure of justice back to the Lloyd family. Secondly, and perhaps even more provocatively, Hernandez's brain is studied by experts after his death. On September 21, 2017, researchers at Boston University revealed that Aaron Hernandez had severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease linked to repeated head traumas. The findings are stunning. His brain showed stage 3 CTE, with stage 4 being the worst, which one researcher said was the most advanced case they had ever seen in someone of Aaron Hernandez's age.
CTE is known to cause aggression, impulsivity, mood swings, and cognitive impairment. Hernandez had a long history of concussions from football. Now, many begin to ask, did CTE contribute to his violent behavior? Oh, his family didn't hesitate to act. They filed a lawsuit against the NFL and the Patriots on behalf of Hernandez's youngest daughter, claiming the league's negligence in handling concussions led to Aaron's disease and, by extension, the murderous actions.
That lawsuit seeking $20 million was later dismissed. However, the CTE revelation complicates the narrative of Hernandez. Was he a cold-blooded killer or an impaired man whose damaged brain contributed to a horrific decision?
And even after his death, Aaron Hernandez saga continued to fascinate and disturb the public. In January of 2020, Netflix released a popular documentary series. It was called Killer Inside: The Mind of Aaron Hernandez, which explored his double life and a variety of factors that may have led to his downfall.
The documentary highlighted Hernandez's troubled upbringing and brain injuries, and even delved into previously unconfirmed territory, including claims that Hernandez struggled with a hidden sexual identity and long-held secrets that may have caused inner turmoil. Hernandez's immediate family did not participate in the film, but many friends, former teammates, and journalists painted a picture of a complex individual, a charismatic athlete who could be kind and loyal, yet also paranoid, impulsive, and capable of ruthless violence.
His case has prompted the NFL to further examine its culture and health protocols, from how teams vet players' characters to how they handle concussions and mental health. And what remains are the unanswered questions and the lives forever altered: the family of Odin Lloyd and the families of Safiro Furtado and Danielle Durabrue, who still wonder if the full truth of that 2012 night is known. Today, the name Aaron Hernandez stands as a cautionary tale in the sports world, a superstar who would catch anything on the field, but ultimately couldn't escape his own inner demons off of the field.
Wow, Adrienne, that is a crazy story and a tragedy. What are your thoughts?
So I was born in Connecticut. Aaron was born in Bristol. I was born, actually married in Connecticut, lived in Southington, and he was the next town over. Truth be told, I'm not a football fan, but there is something very excited when a local hometown young man does make the draft and then gets onto the Patriots. And we were all excited for Aaron. So when this actually happened, I was blown away. But I do feel there's a lot that we can learn from this case.
Yeah, this is a very interesting case, and it's one that I thought I knew the full story until I actually started diving in and doing some research for this show. And honestly, the more I read and the more I learn, the less sympathy I have for Aaron Hernandez. I was under the impression that there's a significant correlation between CTE brain injuries and the murder he committed and the other murders he's accused of committing. And I'm not a doctor, but based on the research I did, the literature does not support that. So that's one thing that stood out to me, is learning that the CTE diagnosis really doesn't, from a scientific or a legal basis, justify committing these violent acts.
So when I saw the documentary, I'll never forget, because I was at my son's house. We were in Tucson, Arizona, and I want to say it was 2022. And I watched it and I was like, wow, the way they said it, it could make sense, the CTE. But at the end of the day, it made sense that it would be brought up anyways, right? There could be a case to be made by Jose Baez. So I kind of swing the other way. Do you recognize the attorney's name? Jose Baez?
Yep, Casey Anthony. He actually did an amazing job for the second trial because he got him the non-guilty. In a lot of ways, I agree with what Joseph just mentioned about Aaron. Yeah, unfortunately, there are so many things that you can justify with his situation and what he did.
But the question really is, what's the big question? Why did he commit suicide? That wasn't that long ago. How was it 8 years ago he was able to use bed sheets to hang himself? Because please explain that.
I think the whole suicide is very confusing because, as we mentioned, he appeared to be really upbeat and optimistic just that same day. He had recently been acquitted of a double murder charge, and he was still on an appeal for his initial conviction. His fate was not necessarily sealed in prison. He still could have gotten off on that appeal. I just find it very surprising that he would kill himself at that time. I can understand if maybe he exhausted all of his appeals. He knew he was going to be there for the rest of his life. and that's what triggered it, but I don't understand the suicide.
I wanted to point out about his fiance. He wrote a letter to her the day that he committed suicide and to his lawyer. And the letters were so conflicted. The things that he says to her and to his daughter are more like a goodbye. But the things that he says to his lawyer are more like looking forward to the things that he wanted to do. And the next thing that he wanted the lawyer to work on. So even when he was writing these letters, they're very conflicted with one another. And one, you're saying goodbye, but in the other, you want to continue living.
Thank you, Mariana. Very interesting. So they're saying, a Bible verse scrawled on his forehead. There's no way I could write John 3:16 on my forehead. There's just no way. Mariana and Joseph, and whoever else wants to answer this, could you actually write that on your forehead?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. You can write it.
I don't know how I would write it with my hand on my forehead. If I took a pen right now, a magic marker, and tried to write John on my forehead, I don't think I could do it.
It is definitely possible. I just picked up a pen. I didn't actually write it on my forehead, but I wrote as if I was, and it is very easy. It was just basically one word and 3 numbers.
Hi, Adrienne, Joseph. Yeah, if you believe in Jesus as the Son of God, you go to heaven. So essentially, that's kind of like a favorite verse of Christianity. That's what that means. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth him will go to heaven. So he thought that might assure that he'd get a free ride in. He wrote that on his forehead. But again, he's severely brain damaged, so it doesn't work that way. But that was his insurance policy on his way out.
Well, thank you, Denise. Thank you for clarifying that.
I did want to just share that there are no public reports indicating other suicides at this correctional center. This prison has a huge history of violence and disciplinary issues, but not suicides.
There's always the first time for everything. He was different. He was just different. Someone who had it all, had an amazing future, and threw it away.
When I heard the story, I absolutely felt like the Patriots and the NFL were ignoring red flags. Should the Patriots have seen the danger, and should they have intervened earlier?
I think if you are an adult and you are hired by a big organization like NFL, it's your responsibility for what you do and how you conduct yourself.
I agree with you, Mariana. I think that while there, of course, is some responsibility on the NFL and the teams to take care of their players, and if they're seeing troubling behavior to try to get that person help, it's a business. They're in a contract. So the same as you would do for your employees, if they were acting a fool, you would probably try to get some resources to help them. But at the end of the day, the NFL is not a babysitter, and neither are the Patriots. So I understand that when a $40 million contract goes out the window, of course you're going to sue the team or the NFL and try to blame it on them. But I just feel like we have to place personal responsibility on Aaron Hernandez. Another thing is he was a heavy, heavy drug user. And it wasn't just party drugs like cocaine and weed. He was doing hardcore, crazy drugs. He had a habit of taking PCP, which is a hallucinogenic, and lacing his marijuana blunts with that. That was like a regular habit of his. That is psycho behavior. Aaron Hernandez and I are the same age. We were in college at the same time on the East Coast. I was not an athlete, but I was friends with athletes and went to many football parties. I can tell you right now, no one was doing PCP. PCP was not like a thing during that time. So he was like on another level with the drugs that he was using. And I think that drug use, specifically the hallucinogenics, may have contributed to these violent murders.
If I had to guess, the levels of what he was taking would probably be enough to sink a battleship. You figure all the things they give you when you have concussions, and then you have more concussions, then you have brain damage, and then you have fluid, and then you have PCP, drugs and alcohol, and then steroid use. A lot of them take steroids. There's no telling. That would make any man crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad Joseph brought that up. Like, good points.
It takes a special kind of person to decide to lace their blunts with PCP. That's all I'm going to say.
I also question, Joseph, if just becoming an NFL player, like how quickly does this go to your head? You know, all of a sudden he's got the $40 million contract. He's an NFL player, right? Like, wow. Does that go to your head? Like, I can pretty much do anything. I'm a football player and I will get away with it?
I think so, yeah. By all accounts, in a lot of the documentaries where friends, former teammates, and people gave testimony, yeah, he was almost sociopathic in the way he just brushed off his behavior. He was not held accountable. He was able to get away with things. And yes, people enabled that behavior. And I think there's definitely a conversation there. But at the end of the day, just because you do something wrong and people allow you to get away with it, that's not the other person's fault. That's still your fault. You know what I mean?
Logically, absolutely. But I don't know where the logic sometimes comes from. Like, I feel like this is sometimes what we see when we're talking true crime is power, greed, and a lack of responsibility, especially with sports players like that. And you know what? Another conversation for another day is just how much they are paid for what they're doing. On the other hand, they do risk these kind of injuries, which I did look up CTE because I was like, wait a second, is this real? Like, what does this look like? Does this make sense? And it did make a lot of sense to me. I don't think we can like wrap our heads around it, but I absolutely am glad that they are looking more into this.
CTE is definitely a serious condition. It's something that absolutely needs to be addressed and talked about. And the NFL, I believe, does have a responsibility to do that for their players. I don't know. His behavior just goes so far beyond what I understand CTE to explain.
Great points. Great points.
Before we close, Joseph and Adrienne, because I know the podcast live forever. And if you one day Aaron's daughter listens to this episode, I just want you to know that I feel for you. There is nothing you did, and it's not your fault. I'm just sending you some love. I know that losing mother or a father at a younger age is very hard. I lost my mom when I was 13, and I know that it's not easy. And you were much younger than me. You know, at 4 years old, you don't even know your parents at that age much, you know. There's just so many things you don't know yet. So I just want to send some love to his daughter.
Thank you, Mariana. Whew. Well, that's a wrap on this Debate the News true crime episode. The case of Aaron Hernandez, it really is as heartbreaking as it's unsettling. But even great talent and wealth, it can't prevent these kind of tragedies. And Hernandez's severe CTE and his troubled past, it may invite sympathy. But as Joseph said, we can't forget the real victims. Odin Lloyd, who lost his life, and countless others who were hurt by Hernandez, and to Odin Lloyd's family, friends, we hope he rests in peace.
This case reminds us that no one is untouchable and nobody is above the law. Thank you to all the listeners for joining us tonight. We appreciate you for being part of our Debate the News true crime community. Your support helps us keep these conversations alive and reach others who care about the stories behind the headlines. We'll be back every Tuesday and Thursday with more chilling cases, debates, and discussions to dive into. Until then, stay safe, stay vigilant, don't do PCP, and definitely don't kill anyone. Good night.